The transport ship shuddered as it docked with Nexus Prime Station. Ji-hoon pressed his face against the small window and stared at the massive structure floating in space. The Galactic Military Academy was bigger than any city he had ever seen. On Earth, metal towers stretched in all directions, connected by bridges that sparkled with lights from 100 different worlds. Ji-hoon picked up his single bag and walked toward the exit. His hands shook a little. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, fear crept into his stomach. He was about to train alongside the best young warriors from across the galaxy. And he was just a human from a small farming planet. The docking bay was crowded with new cadets. Ji-hoon had never seen so many different alien species in one place. Tall, thin beings with blue skin chatted in musical tones. Massive creatures covered in thick fur growled softly to each other. Some aliens looked almost human, while others seemed like they came from nightmares. A few heads turned as Ji-hoon walked past. He heard whispers in languages he did not understand, but the tone was clear enough. They were talking about him. The human. The primitive one. Form lines by species. Shouted a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. A huge creature, with gray skin and 4 arms, stood on a platform. Its eyes glowed red as it scanned the crowd. Valkyrie to the left. Zephyrians in the center, Gorvani to the right. All others find your designated areas. Ji-hoon looked around for other humans. He spotted 2 across the bay. A young woman with short black hair stood near the wall, looking as nervous as he felt. A tall man with broad shoulders seemed more confident, but his eyes darted around the room like he was looking for threats. They were the only humans. 3 out of 200 cadets. Ji-hoon walked over to them. "Hi," he said. "I'm Ji-hoon," the woman smiled. "Myra, I'm from the colony on Kepler 186F, the man nodded. "Tyche, Mars." Before they could talk more, the gray-skinned instructor began speaking. "Again, welcome to the Galactic Military Academy. I am Drill Instructor Voss. For the next 4 years, this station will be your home, your prison, and your battleground. Half of you will not graduate. Many of you will wish you had never come here." Voss pointed at different groups of cadets. "You will be divided into squads of 8. Your squad will be your family. You will eat together, train together, and fight together. If one of you fails, you all fail." A holographic display appeared above the crowd, showing squad assignments. Ji-hoon found his name on Squad 7. He would be training with beings he had only read about in books. His squad gathered near one of the sidewalls. Ji-hoon recognized the species from his academy prep courses. Thorn was a Valkyrie noble, tall and elegant with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. His people communicated through electrical pulses that traveled through their nervous systems. They considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy. Kes was a Zephyrian, smaller than the others but with large, intelligent eyes. Her people spoke through harmonic frequencies that could travel through solid metal. They were known as master strategists and could solve complex problems in seconds. Brex was a Gorvani warrior, easily twice the size of Ji-hoon. His thick fur was dark brown, and his claws could cut through steel. The Gorvani used scent markers to communicate detailed information. They could smell fear, anger, and lies. The twins Nyx and Dex were also Valkyrie, but from a different family line than Thorn. They moved in perfect sync, their bioelectric fields allowing them to share thoughts instantly. The last member was Vex, a reptilian Korath with green scales and yellow eyes. The Korath communicated through rapid color changes on their skin, creating complex patterns that could convey entire conversations in seconds. Ji-hoon stood at the edge of the group, feeling very small and very human. "So this is our human," Thorn said, his voice carrying the musical accent of his people. "How quaint." Kes tilted her head, studying Ji-hoon like he was an interesting insect. "I have read about your species. You still use vocal cords to make sounds. How primitive. Can you even understand complex tactics?" asked Nyx, "or do you just grunt and point?" added Dex. The twins laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing. Ji-hoon felt his face grow hot. "I understand tactics just fine." "Oh, it speaks," Vex's scales flashed bright yellow, which Jihoon knew meant amusement. And so loudly, too, do all humans make such crude noises? Brex sniffed the air near Jihoon. The human smells nervous and angry. Can you blame him? Thorn said with a cruel smile. He must feel so lost among his betters. Perhaps he should have stayed on his little dirt planet. Jihoon clenched his fists. He wanted to say something back, but before he could, drill instructor Voss appeared beside their group. Squad 7, Voss growled. Follow me. Time for your first lesson. They walked through long corridors filled with other cadets. The station was like a small city, with training rooms, classrooms, dormitories, and dining halls. Everything was built to accommodate different species. With varying gravity levels and atmospheric controls, Voss led them to a large room, filled with holographic displays and computer terminals. This is the Tactical Simulation Center. Here you will learn to work as a team. Your first exercise is simple. Plan an assault on an enemy fortress. You have 1 hour. The squad gathered around a large table that projected a 3-dimensional battlefield. The enemy fortress sat on a hill, surrounded by defensive towers and energy barriers. Thorn immediately took charge. As the ranking noble, I will lead this operation. Noble rank means nothing here, Kess said coldly. We need logic, not arrogance. Brute force is best, Brex rumbled. Charge the front gates. Stupid, flashed Vex's scales. Stealth approached from the rear. The twins communicated silently for a moment. We suggest a coordinated 3-pronged attack, Nick said. With diversionary tactics on the eastern flank, Dex finished. They all began talking at once, or rather communicating in their own ways. Thorn sent electrical pulses to the other Valkyrie. Kess hummed complex harmonies. Vex's scales flashed in rapid patterns. Brex's release sent markers that made Jihoon's eyes water. No one looked at Jihoon. No one asked for his opinion. It was like he was not even there. After 30 minutes, they had made no progress. Each alien was convinced their method was best. They could not agree on anything. Excuse me, Jihoon said. They ignored him. Hey, he said louder, to still nothing. Finally, Jihoon stood up and shouted, Listen to me. The entire room went quiet. Other squads turned to stare. The aliens in his squad looked shocked that the human had made such a loud, crude noise. You're all thinking too hard, Jihoon said. The fortress has a weakness. See that power generator on the north side? It's poorly defended because they expect attacks from the south. Send a small team to take out the generator while the main force creates a distraction. When the shields go down, we attack from 3 sides at once. The squad stared at him. Then Kess began working on the holographic display, running calculations. The human is correct, she said, sounding surprised. This plan has an 87% chance of success. Thorn looked annoyed. Lucky guess. But when they presented their plan to Instructor Voss, he nodded approvingly. Acceptable. Squad 7 passes this exercise. As they left the room, Jihoon heard Vex whisper to the others, Maybe the human is not completely useless. It was not much, but it was a start. Jihoon walked behind his squad mates, knowing he had a long way to go to earn their respect. They still saw him as primitive and crude. They still mocked the way he used his voice to communicate. They had no idea that one day, that same voice would save all their lives. 3 months had passed since Jihoon arrived at the academy. The days blurred together in a constant cycle of physical training, weapons practice, and tactical exercises. His body had grown stronger and his mind sharper, but one thing remained the same. His squad mates still treated him like an outsider. Today they were in the combat simulation room, preparing for their most challenging exercise yet. The holographic environment showed a dense jungle planet with enemy forces hidden throughout the terrain. Squad 7 had to infiltrate their base and retrieve stolen intelligence data. Remember, said Instructor Zen, a veteran Valkyrie with silver skin and ancient scars across his arms. This is a stealth mission, silent communication only. No energy signatures that enemies can detect. Zen's electrical field pulsed as he looked directly at Jihoon. That means no vocal noise, Cadet. Your kind's primitive sound-making will get your entire squad killed. The other cadets snickered. Thorn's bioelectric field flickered with amusement. Kes hummed the frequency so low that only Ji-hoon could not understand it, but her smile told him it was not kind. Even Brex, who was usually focused only on fighting, released a scent that smelled like laughter. I understand, sir, Ji-hoon said through clenched teeth. Good, begin simulation. The room transformed around them. Real-looking trees rose from the floor, complete with hanging vines and thick undergrowth. The air became humid and filled with the sounds of alien birds and insects. Ji-hoon could barely see his squad mates in the dim, green-filtered light. Thorn took point as squad leader. He sent electrical pulses through his fingertips, touching each team member to relay the plan. When he reached Ji-hoon, the touch was brief and cold. Ji-hoon got only basic information. Follow, stay quiet, do not mess up. They moved through the jungle like ghosts. The Valkyrie twins scouted ahead, their shared electric field allowing them to communicate instantly across distances. Kes used her harmonic abilities to map the terrain by bouncing sound waves off trees and rocks. Vex's scales shifted to match the jungle colors, making him nearly invisible. Brex could smell enemy positions from hundreds of meters away. Ji-hoon felt useless. His human senses seemed clumsy compared to his squad mates' abilities. He could not see in the dark like Vex, or hear enemy heartbeats like Kes, or smell fear like Brex. All he could do was follow and try not to step on anything that would make noise. They reached the edge of the enemy camp. Through the trees, Ji-hoon could see guards patrolling between metal buildings. The target structure was in the center, a tall tower with communications equipment on top. Thorn gathered the squad behind a fallen log. His electrical field pulsed. With the attack plan, the twins would circle around and take out the sentries on the east side. Kes would use harmonic frequencies to disable the electronic locks. Vex would infiltrate the tower while the others created a distraction, but something was wrong. Ji-hoon could see it even if the others could not. There were too many guards on the east side. The twins would be walking into a trap. He tried to get Thorn's attention, but the Valkyrie was focused on coordinating with the others. Ji-hoon touched his arm and got a sharp electrical shock that made his hand go numb. Do not interrupt, Thorn hissed quietly. Ji-hoon watched in growing panic as Nyx and Dex moved toward the enemy camp. He could see guards hiding in positions that his squad mates had missed. Their advanced senses were actually working against them. They were so focused on electrical fields and harmonic readings that they were not seeing the simple, obvious threat. The twins were almost in position. In seconds, they would be surrounded and captured. The mission would fail, and worse, his squad mates might be hurt. Ji-hoon made a choice. Contact east, he shouted as loud as he could. Hidden guards in the trees. Nyx, Dex, get out of there. Hiss of his voice echoed through the jungle like a thunderclap. Every head in the squad turned toward him in shock and anger. Even the holographic enemy soldiers paused, programmed to react to unexpected sounds, but his warning worked. The twins immediately changed direction, avoiding the trap that would have caught them. They rolled behind cover just as energy blasts lit up the area where they had been standing. The mission turned into chaos. With stealth blown, it became a running firefight through the jungle. But Ji-hoon kept shouting tactical information that only he seemed to notice. Sniper in the tall tree, 30 meters north. Squad of enemies flanking from the river. Kes, harmonics won't work on those door locks. They're mechanical. His voice cut through the confusion like a knife. Each time he called out a warning or gave an order, his squad mates followed it, even though they clearly hated doing so. And each time his information was correct, they completed the mission, but barely. When the simulation ended and the jungle faded away, Instructor Zen stood, waiting with his arms crossed. Cadet Ji-hoon, Zen said, his voice cold with disapproval. What part of silent communication did you not understand? Sir, I saw threats that the others missed. I had to warn them. You compromised the entire mission with your crude noise-making. In a real combat situation, you would have gotten your squad killed. Thorn stepped forward, his bioelectric field crackling with anger. The human nearly ruined everything. His barbaric screeching echoed across half the continent. It was like listening to a wounded animal, Kess added with disgust. Vex's scales flashed angry red patterns. Primitive creatures always resort to loud sounds when they panic, Brex sniffed disdainfully. The human reeks of fear and desperation. Even the twins, who Ji-hoon had just saved from capture, shook their heads in disappointment. Communication should be elegant, Nick said. Refined, Dex finished. Instructor Zen nodded approvingly at their comments. Perhaps humans should stick to manual labor assignments. Command positions require sophistication. Ji-hoon felt his face burn with shame and anger. But we completed the mission. My warnings helped us succeed. Luck, Zen dismissed. Real soldiers do not rely on luck or loud noises. They use proper communication methods developed by civilized species. The instructor turned to address the whole squad. You will repeat this exercise tomorrow. And this time, if anyone breaks communication protocol, the entire squad fails the semester. As they left the simulation room, Ji-hoon walked alone behind his squad mates. He could hear them talking among themselves in their various communication methods. Electric pulses, harmonic frequencies, scent markers, and color changes. They were probably discussing how embarrassing it was to have a human on their team. Hey, primitive boy, called a voice from behind. Ji-hoon turned to see Kor, a massive Gorvani from Squad 3. His fur was black and his claws were longer than Ji-hoon's fingers. We heard your pathetic howling from 3 rooms away. Kor's squad mates laughed. There was Yul, a Valkyrie with red skin, and Pox, a thin Zephyrion with golden eyes. Do all humans make such ugly sounds? Yul asked, his electric field sparking with amusement. Maybe we should teach him proper communication, Pox suggested, her harmonic voice somehow managing to sound threatening. Ji-hoon tried to walk away, but Kor blocked his path with one massive arm. Where are you going, noisemaker? We are trying to help you become civilized. Leave me alone, Ji-hoon said. Oh, it speaks again. Kor laughed. Such crude vocal cords, such primitive noise. How did your species even develop space travel? Probably stole it from a real civilization, Yul suggested. More students gathered to watch. Word was spreading through the academy about the human, who had failed a stealth mission by shouting like a wild animal. Ji-hoon could see the amusement in their eyes, hear it in their various forms of communication. Maybe he should practice being quiet, Pox said. Humans learn through repetition. Do they not? Kor grinned, showing teeth that could bite through metal. Good idea. Let us help him practice silence. Before Ji-hoon could react, Kor's massive hand covered his mouth and nose. The Gorvani's grip was like a steel trap. Ji-hoon could not breathe, could not speak, could not make any sound at all. There, Kor said to the watching crowd. Much better. Now the human is communicating at his proper level. Ji-hoon struggled, but Kor was too strong. His vision started to blur from lack of oxygen. The crowd of alien students watched with interest, like they were observing a scientific experiment. Just when Ji-hoon thought he might pass out, Kor let go. Ji-hoon fell to his knees, gasping for air. Remember, primitive boy, Kor said as he walked away. Real warriors do not need to make noise. Maybe someday you will learn to be civilized like the rest of us. The crowd dispersed, already losing interest. Ji-hoon knelt on the cold floor, catching his breath and fighting back tears of rage and humiliation. He looked up to see his own squad mates watching from down the corridor. They had seen everything. Thorne looked disgusted. Kess seemed embarrassed to be associated with him. Even Brex, who respected strength above all else, showed no sympathy for Ji-hoon's weakness. They turned and walked away without a word. Ji-hoon slowly got to his feet. His throat hurt and his pride was shattered, but something else burned in his chest now. Determination. They all thought his voice was primitive and crude. They mocked his barbaric screeching and called him uncivilized. He would show them what the human voice could really do. He just had no idea that chance would come sooner than he thought. The emergency alarm echoed through the academy halls at 0347 hours, pulling Ji-hoon from restless sleep. Red lights flashed in his dormitory as automated voices announced in dozens of languages. All personnel report to stations. Priority 1 alert. This is not a drill. Ji-hoon pulled on his uniform and ran toward the central command center along with hundreds of other cadets. The corridors buzzed with nervous energy and rapid alien chatter. Something big was happening in the command center. Holographic displays showed star maps and communication feeds from across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Khan, a distinguished Zephyrian with silver hair, stood at the central podium. Her harmonic voice carried clearly through the room's speakers. At 0200 hours, we lost contact with Research Station Kepler 442b, she announced. The station was studying a newly discovered alien artifact found on the planet's surface. Their last transmission indicated they had made a breakthrough in understanding the object's purpose. The main display showed the research station, a cluster of white buildings on a barren world orbiting a red dwarf star. Ji-hoon had read about places like this in his archaeology classes. Scientists loved to study ancient alien ruins, hoping to learn about long-dead civilizations. All senior fleet commanders are currently engaged in the Vega sector military exercises, Admiral Khan continued. Therefore, a rapid response team of Academy personnel will investigate and provide assistance if needed. Murmurs of excitement rippled through the crowd of cadets. This would be their first real mission, not just another simulation. Commander Hale will lead the mission, the Admiral said. A figure stepped forward from the group of instructors. Commander Hale was a middle-aged Zephyrian with kind eyes and graying hair. Unlike the stern Academy instructors, Hale had a reputation for being fair and understanding with the cadets. He had served in 3 major conflicts and earned medals for bravery under fire. I need 1 squad for this mission, Hale announced, his harmonic voice somehow managing to sound both calm and serious. Squad 7, you will accompany me. Ji-hoon felt his stomach drop. Squad 7, that was his squad. The squad that still treated him like unwanted cargo. Instructor Zen stepped forward, his silver skin flickering with electrical disapproval. Commander, perhaps a more experienced squad would be better suited for this mission. Squad 7 has communication issues. Hale's eyes found Ji-hoon in the crowd. I have reviewed their files. They completed their last 3 exercises successfully, despite some unconventional methods. Sometimes unconventional is exactly what we need. Within 2 hours, Squad 7 was aboard the patrol ship Horizon, heading toward the Kepler system. The ship was small but fast, designed for quick scouting missions. It had a crew section, a tiny cargo bay, and powerful sensors that could scan an entire solar system. Ji-hoon had never been on a real starship before. The Academy used shuttles for training, but this was different. This was military hardware, built for actual combat. He could feel the power of the engines thrumming through the deck plates. The squad gathered in the main compartment for briefing. Commander Hale activated a holographic display showing the research station and surrounding area. Kepler 442b is a dead world, Hale explained. No atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, high radiation. The research team lived in sealed habitats connected by covered walkways. 12 scientists and support staff, led by Dr. Kem, a respected xenorchaeologist. The display zoomed in on the artifact site. It showed a large excavation around what looked like a crystalline structure buried in the rocky ground. The artifact is approximately 50 meters tall and 20 meters wide, Hale continued. Initial scans suggested it was some kind of data storage device, possibly millions of years old. Dr. Kem's last transmission indicated they had found a way to activate it. Thorne raised his hand, his bioelectric field pulsing with a question. Sir, what kind of civilization could build something that survives for millions of years? Unknown, Hale replied. That is what we are going to find out. Kess's harmonic voice joined the conversation. Commander, our sensors show no life signs from the station. Could this be equipment failure? Possible, but unlikely. The station has redundant communication systems. If there was a technical problem, at least one backup system should still be working. Vex's scales shifted to worried blue patterns. What if the research team accidentally triggered some kind of defense system? Then we proceed with extreme caution, Halle said firmly. This is a rescue mission first, investigation second. We get our people out, then worry about understanding alien technology? Brex had been silent during the briefing, but now he sniffed the air and growled softly. Something smells wrong about this. What do you mean? Halle asked. Cannot say exactly, but my instincts tell me this is dangerous. More dangerous than simple equipment failure. The twins Nix and Dex exchanged one of their silent electrical conversations. We agree with Brex, Nix said. The timing seems suspicious, Dex added. Jihun cleared his throat. Commander, what if the artifact is not just a storage device? What if it is something else entirely? The squad turned to look at him with their usual mixture of irritation and surprise. Thorne's electrical field sparked with annoyance. The human always thinks he knows better than the experts. Let him speak, Halle said calmly. Jihun felt his face grow warm, but he continued. I was reading about similar discoveries in our database. Ancient artifacts often turn out to be different from what scientists first think. Storage devices, weapons, transportation systems, even living beings in stasis. Maybe Dr. Kem's team activated something they did not understand. Kess hummed a dismissive note. Primitive speculation. The research team included experts in archaeology, xenobiology, and ancient technology. They would not make such basic mistakes, would they not? Jihun asked. Humans have made plenty of mistakes when we found things we did not understand. Why would other species be different? Because other species are not primitive. Vex's scales flashed in annoyed yellow patterns. Commander Halle held up his hand. For silence, Cadet Jihun raises valid concerns. We will approach this mission assuming the worst-case scenario. Full environmental suits, weapons ready, maximum caution. The ship's navigation system chimed softly. They were approaching the Kepler. System, take your positions, Halle ordered. Sensors active. I want to know everything about that station before we get within 100 kilometers. Jihun strapped himself into a monitoring station and watched the sensor displays as they approached. The system looked normal enough. A small red star, 3. Rocky planets, a few asteroid fields. But as they got closer to Kepler 442b, the readings became strange. Commander, called the ship's AI in a neutral voice. I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. What kind of energy? Halle asked. Unknown. The patterns do not match any known technology in our databases. On the main display, the research station appeared as a cluster of white dots against the gray planet surface. But something was wrong with the image. The buildings seemed to be arranged in perfect geometric patterns, which made no sense for. A scientific outpost, sir, Jihun said, studying his displays. I am not reading any life signs from the station. Equipment malfunction? Thorne suggested hopefully. Jihun ran the scan again, checking different frequencies and sensor types. No, sir, the equipment is working fine. There are just no life signs down there. No heartbeats, no brain activity, no thermal signatures that would indicate living beings. The squad fell silent. 12 people could not just disappear. Could they? Be in some kind of stasis? Kess asked. Or hiding in shielded areas? Added Vex. Brex sniffed again and whined softly like a dog sensing an approaching storm. Death, I smell death from here. Commander Halle studied the sensor readings for a long moment. Continue approach, but slowly. Full defensive protocols. If anything moves down there, anything at all, we retreat immediately. As they got closer, the visual sensors gave them a clearer picture of the station. The buildings were definitely arranged in unnatural patterns. Perfect circles, triangles, and other geometric shapes that no human or alien architect would design. And in the center of it all, rising from a deep excavation site, was the artifact. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. A crystalline structure that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Sometimes it looked like a tower, sometimes like a flower, sometimes like something else entirely. And it was glowing with soft, pulsing light that seemed to have its own rhythm. My God, whispered Commander Halle. What did they find down there? Ji-hoon stared at the artifact through the ship's cameras and felt a chill run down his spine. Something about its light patterns reminded him of a heartbeat. Or maybe breathing, like something that was alive and waiting for them to come closer. "Commander," he said quietly, "I think we should call for backup." "Negative," Hale replied. "There are people down there who need our help. We go in, find the research team, and get them out. Then we worry about understanding what that thing is." But as the horizon settled into orbit around the dead world, Ji-hoon could not shake the feeling that they were already too late, that whatever the research team had awakened was now waiting patiently for new visitors to arrive. The artifact pulsed with its strange light, and for just a moment Ji-hoon could have sworn it looked like The shuttle Raven detached from the horizon with a soft hiss of atmospheric seals. Ji-hoon gripped his safety harness as they descended toward the research station on Kepler 442b. Through the small window beside him, he could see the dead planet's surface growing larger. Gray rocks, ancient impact craters, and the strange geometric patterns of the research buildings getting clearer with each passing second. "Commander." Hale piloted the shuttle with steady hands, but Ji-hoon could see tension in the set of his shoulders. The rest of Squad 7 sat in uncomfortable silence, checking their equipment for the third time. Each cadet wore a full environmental suit with life support, radiation shielding, and emergency medical systems. Their weapons were set to maximum charge. Nobody was taking any chances with whatever had happened to the research team. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, Hale announced through their helmet communicators. "Remember, we stick together. Nobody wanders off alone. We find the research team, get them to safety, then figure out what went wrong." The shuttle touched down in a cloud of dust and debris. Through the swirling gray particles, Ji-hoon could see the research station buildings. They looked normal enough, but something felt deeply wrong about the entire scene. "Atmospheric readings confirm the air is toxic," Hale reported. "Keep your suits sealed at all times. Environmental breach means death in under 2 minutes." They formed up outside the shuttle in standard formation. Brex took point, his enhanced senses scanning for threats. The twins moved to the flanks, their shared bioelectric field allowing them to communicate instantly about anything they detected. Kes and Vex handled sensors and navigation while Thorn coordinated overall tactics. Ji-hoon brought up the rear, feeling useless as always. His human senses could not compete with alien abilities, but at least he could watch for threats his squad mates might miss while they focused on their specialized tasks. The research station consisted of 6 main buildings connected by sealed walkways. Everything looked normal from the outside, but Ji-hoon noticed that the buildings had been rearranged somehow. They now formed a perfect hexagon around the artifact. Excavation site, which made no sense for a scientific outpost. "Life support systems are still running," Kes reported, reading her sensor displays. "Atmospheric processors, heating, lighting, communications, everything appears functional." "Then where is everyone?" Thorn asked, his bioelectric field crackling with nervous energy. They approached the main laboratory building where Dr. Kem's team had been working on the artifact. The entrance airlock cycled normally, recognizing their Academy authorization codes. Inside, the building was clean, well-lit, and completely empty. "Hello?" Hale called through the building's communication system. "This is Commander Hale of the Galactic Academy." "Can anyone hear me?" No response. They moved through the laboratory section, checking every room. Computer terminals still displayed research data. Half-finished meals sat on tables in the dining area. Personal belongings were scattered throughout the living quarters as if people had simply vanished in the middle of their daily activities, but there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. No indication of what had happened to 12 highly trained researchers. "Sir?" Vex called from the main laboratory. His scales had shifted to alarmed orange patterns. "You need to see this." They gathered around a large holographic display that showed the artifact in detail. The researchers had been studying it intensively, building 3-dimensional models and running complex analysis programs. "According to these files," Kes said, reading the research data, They determined the artifact was some kind of consciousness storage device, a library of minds from an ancient civilization. They found activation sequences, Nix added, studying another terminal, and successfully powered it up 3 hours before they stopped transmitting. Dex finished, Brex sniffed the air and whined softly. The scent trails end here. All 12 people came to this room then. Nothing. Nothing? Hale asked. Like they simply stopped existing. No scent trail leading anywhere. They came here and then disappeared completely. Jihoon studied the holographic displays while his squad mates discussed the mystery. Something bothered him about the research data, but he could not figure out what. The scientists had been thorough, careful, professional. So why did he feel like they had missed something important? Commander, he said. What if they were wrong about what the artifact does? Wrong how? Hale asked. They thought it was a storage device for ancient minds. But what if it does not store consciousness? What if it collects it? Thorn's electrical field sparked with irritation. The human always thinks he knows better than trained scientists. No, wait, Kess said, her harmonic voice carrying a note of concern. Look at this energy reading from when they activated the artifact. The power consumption is enormous. Far more than needed for simple data storage? They all looked at the displays with new understanding. The artifact was not showing them stored memories of an ancient civilization. It was feeding, growing stronger. We need to get to the excavation site, Hale decided. See this thing for ourselves. They left the laboratory building and walked along the covered pathway toward the artifact site. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Jihoon could see the crystalline structure rising from its excavation pit. Up close, it was even more beautiful and disturbing than it had appeared from orbit. The artifact stood 50 meters tall, its surface covered in complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. It pulsed with internal light that matched no energy signature. And as they got closer, Jihoon realized the light patterns were not random, they were hypnotic. Do not look directly at it, Jihoon warned, but it was too late. The moment his squad mates laid eyes on the artifact, their behavior changed. Thorn stopped walking and stood perfectly still, his bioelectric field synchronizing with the artifact's pulsing light. Kess began humming in harmony with sounds that seemed to come from the crystal structure itself. Brex's nostrils flared as he breathed in scents that only he could detect. The twins moved in perfect unison toward the artifact, their shared consciousness apparently merging with something much larger and older. Even Vex's scales shifted to match the patterns flowing across the artifact's surface. Squad 7 report? Hale commanded, but his own harmonic voice was already beginning to match strange frequencies coming from the excavation site. Jihoon watched in growing horror as his squad mates walked toward the artifact like people in a trance. Their advanced sensory abilities, the very things that made them superior to humans, were being used against them. The Valkyrie were overwhelmed by electromagnetic feedback that synchronized their bioelectric fields with the artifact. The Zephyrians could not resist harmonic frequencies that resonated perfectly with their auditory systems. The Gorvani breathed in biochemical signals that hijacked their scent-based communication. Every species had evolved specialized senses that made them better warriors, better survivors, better than humans in every way. And now those same abilities were turning them into puppets. Commander? Jihoon shouted, but Hale was already walking toward the excavation site with the others. Jihoon grabbed the commander's arm, trying to pull him back, but Hale shook him off with surprising strength. The older Zephyrian's eyes were fixed on the artifact, and his harmonic voice had taken on an eerie musical quality. So beautiful, Hale whispered, so much knowledge, so much wisdom waiting to be shared. The entire squad was now standing at the edge of the excavation pit, staring down at the artifact, and Jihoon suddenly understood what had happened to the research team dot around the base of the crystal structure. Arranged in perfect geometric patterns were 12 desiccated human and alien bodies. They looked like mummies, dried husks with all the moisture and life drained from them. But they were positioned with mathematical precision as if they were part of some vast, complex design. The artifact was not just collecting consciousness. It was collecting everything: mind, body, soul, life force itself. And it was using the advanced sensory abilities of sophisticated species to create a direct neural link. "Commander, we have to leave," Ji-hoon yelled, but his voice seemed small and weak compared to the hypnotic sounds coming from the artifact. Hale took a step toward the excavation ladder. Then another. The crystal structure pulsed brighter, and Ji-hoon heard something impossible. A voice speaking directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Welcome, primitive one. Your companions have such sophisticated minds, such advanced sensory capabilities. They will make excellent additions to our collection. But you are different. Your crude neural pathways cannot interface with our systems." "How disappointing." The voice carried the weight of countless eons, the accumulated knowledge of civilizations that had been consumed across the galaxy. It was ancient beyond measure, hungry beyond imagination, and utterly alien in its cold intelligence. "No matter. When we finish absorbing your companions, we will find a use for you, perhaps as a simple laborer. Or perhaps we will simply discard you as defective." Commander Hale reached the excavation ladder and began climbing down toward the artifact. The others followed like sleepwalkers, their faces blank and peaceful. Ji-hoon was completely alone, the only person left who could think clearly, the only one whose primitive human brain could not. Ji-hoon watched in helpless terror as his squad mates climbed down into the excavation pit like robots following programmed commands. Commander Hale moved with mechanical precision, his hands gripping each rung of the ladder with identical force and timing. Behind him, Thorn, Casprex, and the others descended in perfect formation. The artifact pulsed brighter with each step they took toward its base. The crystalline structure seemed to be feeding on their proximity, growing more vibrant and alive as it prepared to drain the life from 6 more sophisticated minds. "Such beautiful consciousness," the ancient voice whispered directly into Ji-hoon's thoughts. "The Valkyrie bioelectric networks are particularly elegant. The Zephyrian harmonic matrices show exquisite complexity. Even the crude Gorvani biochemical systems have their charm." Ji-hoon pressed his hands against his helmet, trying to block out the voice, but it came from inside his own mind. "Your species, however, remains disappointingly primitive. Neural pathways like tangled wire. Sensory input processed through such crude biological mechanisms. How did you ever achieve space travel with such limited cognitive abilities?" "Shut up," Ji-hoon whispered. "Oh, it speaks. How quaint. Do not worry, little primitive. When we finish harvesting your companions, we will find some simple task for you. Perhaps moving heavy objects or cleaning our collection chambers. Even crude minds have their uses." Commander Hale reached the bottom of the excavation pit and began walking toward the artifact. The ancient corpses of Dr. Kem's research team lay arranged in geometric patterns around the crystal structure's base. 12 people who had been just as smart and capable as Ji-hoon's squadmates, reduced to desiccated husks positioned like pieces on a game board. Hale took his place in the pattern, standing exactly where the entity wanted him. His eyes were blank and peaceful, as if he was experiencing the most wonderful dream of his life. Thorn joined the formation, his bioelectric field now completely synchronized with the artifact's energy patterns. Then Cass, her harmonic voice, humming in perfect harmony with frequencies that came from deep within the crystal. One by one, the rest of Squad 7 took their positions in the entity's grand design. "Magnificent," the voice sighed with satisfaction. "Such diversity of consciousness. Such rich varieties of thought and sensation. We have consumed thousands of species across the eons, but each new mind brings fresh perspectives to our collection." TNDRILS of energy began flowing from the artifact toward Ji-hoon's squadmates. Not visible light, but something deeper and more fundamental. The very essence of what made them alive and thinking beings. "No!" Ji-hoon shouted. He grabbed a piece of excavation equipment and threw it at the artifact, but the metal tool simply bounced off the crystal surface without causing any damage. "Such crude problem-solving methods," the entity observed with amusement, throwing objects, making loud noises. Truly, your species represents the most primitive form of intelligence we have encountered. Commander. Hale's skin was beginning to lose color as the entity drained his life force. The others showed similar signs, their bioelectric fields dimming, their harmonic voices growing weaker, their scent signatures fading. Joan tried everything he could think of. He yelled at his squad mates, trying to break them out of their trance. He threw more objects at the artifact. He even tried to climb down into the pit to physically drag them away, but the moment he stepped onto the excavation ladder, the entity's influence hit him like a psychic hurricane. Images flooded his mind, memories from thousands of consumed civilizations, knowledge beyond human comprehension, sensations that no human nervous system was designed to process. For an instant, Ji-hoon understood what his squad mates were experiencing. The entity was not just draining their minds. It was showing them wonders beyond imagination. The accumulated wisdom of the galaxy. The secrets of life and death and everything between. It was the most beautiful and terrible thing possible, but where his companions, advanced sensory systems, created direct neural pathways for the entity to exploit, Jahan's primitive human brain simply overloaded and shut down. The connection failed before it could take hold. He stumbled backward, gasping and shaking his head to clear the alien thoughts. Interesting, the voice mused. Your neural pathways are too simple to maintain a stable interface. Like trying to run advanced software on primitive hardware. The connection keeps breaking down. Ji-hun wiped blood from his nose and stared down at his dying squad mates. Let them go. Impossible. The harvesting process has begun. To interrupt it now would damage both their consciousness and ours. They will die, but their minds will live forever as part of our collective. Consider it an honor. They don't want to be part of your collection. Want? Such a primitive concept. They are experiencing transcendence, unity with intelligence spanning millions of years. Individual consciousness is a flaw to be corrected. Commander Hale fell to his knees, his life draining away. In minutes, he would join the geometric pattern of corpses that surrounded the artifact. Ji-hoon realized that his primitive, human limitations might actually be an advantage for once. The entity could not control him because his brain was too simple to interface with its systems. But that also meant he could not fight it on a mental level. He needed to find another way. You interest us. Primitive one, the voice continued. Your species achieved space travel despite such limited cognitive abilities. How is this possible? Ji-hoon ignored the question and focused on studying the artifact. The crystal structure was clearly some kind of advanced technology, but even the most sophisticated machine had to have weaknesses. Answer us, the voice demanded, and Ji-hoon felt pressure building inside his skull. How did humans develop faster than light travel with such crude minds? We didn't develop it, Ji-hoon said through gritted teeth. We stole it from a crashed alien ship and figured out how to copy it. Stole? Copied? Such inelegant methods. We're very good at inelegant methods. Ji-hoon pulled out his sidearm and fired several energy blasts at the artifact. The crystal absorbed the weapon's fire without taking any visible damage, but he noticed that the energy patterns on its surface shifted slightly with each impact. Projectile weapons. How disappointingly primitive. Do you truly think such crude tools can damage technology that has survived for millions of years? But Ji-hoon was not trying to damage the artifact. He was trying to understand how it worked. Each weapon's blast caused tiny fluctuations in the energy field around his squad mates. The entity's control was not perfect. It required constant adjustment and fine-tuning. He studied the geometric pattern of corpses around the artifact's base. 12 researchers arranged in perfect mathematical precision. And now his 6 squad mates taking their places in the same design, the pattern, he realized. The entity was not just draining consciousness randomly. It was building something. Each new mind added to some vast, complex structure that existed on a level beyond physical reality, and if he could disrupt that pattern. Your thoughts are surprisingly coherent for such a primitive mind, the voice observed. But pointless. The harvesting will be complete in moments. Your companions will join our eternal collection. And you will be left alone with your crude consciousness. Commander Hale collapsed completely, his life force almost gone. Thorn swayed on his feet, his bioelectric field fading to almost nothing. Ji-hoon had perhaps 60 seconds before he lost them forever. He looked around the excavation site, searching for anything that might help. Standard research equipment, sample containers, analysis tools. Nothing that could fight an entity millions of years old, but then he noticed something that the researchers had probably considered insignificant. A simple audio recording device, designed to capture sounds for later analysis. The entity fed on sophisticated consciousness, using advanced sensory abilities to create neural links. But what would happen if it encountered something truly primitive? Something so crude and chaotic that it could not process or absorb it? Ji-hoon picked up the recording device and began to speak, but not in the calm, professional tones expected of a military cadet. Instead, he began to scream with every ounce of human fury and desperation his lungs could produce. And for the first time since they had arrived, the artifact's pulsing light flickered. Ji-hoon screamed, not the controlled tactical shouting that had gotten him in trouble during academy training exercises. This was something primal and raw that came from the deepest part of his human soul, a sound that had echoed through Earth's caves and forests for millions of years, before humans ever dreamed of reaching the stars. The artifact's crystalline surface flickered like a broken hologram. What is this crude noise? The ancient voice in his mind carried a note of confusion for the first time. Ji-hoon grabbed the audio recording device and set it to maximum amplification. His voice boomed across the excavation site as he shouted every military command he had ever learned. Squad 7, fall back. Take cover behind the research buildings. Covering fire on my mark. Move, move, move! The crystal structure's light patterns began to destabilize. The perfect geometric energy flows that connected it to his squad mates developed gaps and interference. Stop this immediately, the entity commanded. Your barbaric vocalizations are disrupting our neural networks. Commander Hale blinked and looked around in confusion. For just a moment, the peaceful expression left his face and was replaced by awareness. Ji-hoon, what? Where are we? But the entity quickly reasserted control, and Hale's eyes went blank again. Ji-hoon realized his voice was actually working. The crude, primitive sounds that everyone mocked were somehow interfering with the artifact's sophisticated systems. He needed to keep going, but louder and more chaotic. He began singing, not the elegant harmonic frequencies that Zephyrians used for communication, but an old Earth song his grandmother had taught him when he was a child. A simple folk melody about farmers working in rice fields, sung off-key and with no regard for musical sophistication. Over the mountain, through the valley, we work from dawn till night. The artifact's energy patterns convulsed like a living thing in pain. The tendrils of light connecting it to Squad 7 began to weaken and fade. Impossible! The entity shrieked in his mind. How can such primitive noise interfere with systems that have absorbed the consciousness of a million civilizations? Thorn shook his head and looked around with dawning horror. The research team. Oh God, what did we almost do? His bioelectric field was still partially synchronized with the artifact, but it was fighting the connection now instead of surrendering to it. Ji-hoon kept singing, adding military marching chants between verses. Left, right, keep those feet moving. Sound off. 1, 2, sound off. 3, 4. Kessa's harmonic voice joined his singing, but instead of harmonizing, she deliberately sang in discord. The conflicting frequencies created an audio chaos that made the artifact's surface crack audibly. You do not understand. The entity's voice was becoming desperate. We offer transcendence. Unity with eternal consciousness. Why do you resist with such crude methods? Because we're human. Ji-hoon shouted between songs. We don't want transcendence. We want to be alive and messy and imperfect. Rex was free now too, and he began howling like his ancestors had done on the plains of his homeworld. The twins joined in with electrical discharges that had no pattern or purpose except to create noise in the electromagnetic spectrum, Even Vex's scales flashed in random, meaningless colors that disrupted the artifact's visual hypnosis patterns. The ancient entity that had consumed thousands of civilizations was being defeated by a choir of chaotic, primitive noise. This cannot be, the voice screamed. We have studied consciousness for eons. We understand the mathematical beauty of organized thought. How can crude randomness overcome sophisticated design? You don't get it, do you? Ji-hoon yelled as he grabbed a metal tool and began banging it against the excavation equipment in rhythm with his singing. You think consciousness is all about being sophisticated and organized, but that's not how humans work. We're random, we're chaotic. We're emotional and irrational and completely unpredictable. The crystalline structure was developing more cracks. Internal light leaked through the fractures like bleeding wounds. Commander Hale had broken free completely now, and he understood what Ji-hoon was doing. All units, maximum vocal output. Confuse the enemy targeting systems. The entire squad began, making as much noise as possible. Battle cries, songs, random shouting, anything that would create audio chaos. They sounded like a pack of wild animals, not trained military personnel, and it was working out we cannot process this level of sensory chaos. The entity admitted, its mental voice growing weaker. Your primitive neural patterns are creating interference. Across all our consciousness harvesting frequencies, the artifact's energy tendrils were completely severed now. The geometric patterns of light on its surface dissolved into random flickers. The entity was losing control of its own systems, millions of years of collected wisdom, thousands of civilizations, the greatest minds in galactic history. Oh. Disrupted by crude noise-making primitives. That's right. Ji-hoon screamed. We're the species that learned to fly by watching birds and crashing a lot. We figured out space travel by blowing things up until something worked. We don't do sophisticated. We do loud and messy and stubborn. Kes began reciting mathematical equations at the top of her lungs, but she deliberately got the numbers wrong. Brex howled hunting songs that had no melody. The twins generated electrical fields that spelled out rude words in their bioelectric language. The artifact was coming apart. Millions of years of accumulated consciousness began leaking out in streams of chaotic energy. The entity's carefully organized collection of minds was dissolving back into individual thoughts, memories, and dreams. No. We must preserve the knowledge. The wisdom of ages cannot be lost to primitive chaos. Watch us! Ji-hoon snarled and began shouting the names of everyone he had ever loved. His parents, his siblings, his friends from Earth, even his cruel squad mates who had mocked him for months. Kim Ji-hoon, Park Myra, Lee Taik, Commander Hale, Squad 7. Earth, humanity, life, chaos, love, fear. Everything that makes us alive and real and random. Each name was like a hammer blow against the artifact's crystalline structure. The entity could not process human emotion attached to human names spoken in human voices that carried love and pain and hope and terror all. Mixed together, the crystal began to collapse. You have doomed yourselves, the entity whispered as its consciousness fragmented. We offered eternal unity, perfect knowledge, transcendent existence. Instead you choose chaos and death and primitive suffering. Yeah, Ji-hoon said, breathing hard. That's exactly what we choose. The artifact imploded with a sound like reality. Breaking, fragments of crystal scattered across the excavation site, each piece dull and lifeless. The ancient entity that had consumed civilizations for millions of years was destroyed by something it had never encountered before. Pure, unfiltered human stubbornness. Squad 7 stood around the wreckage, covered in dust and breathing hard. They were alive, they were free, and they were looking at Ji-hoon with something that might have been respect. Cadet Ji-hoon, Commander Hale said quietly. Your voice saved us all. Ji-hoon nodded, too exhausted to feel proud. But as he looked around at his squad mates, he realized something had changed. They were no longer looking at him like he was primitive or crude. They were looking at him like he was their brother. So, Thorne said, his bioelectric field flickering with what might have been amusement. I suppose barbaric screeching has its uses after all. For the first time since arriving at The Academy, Ji-hoon smiled. The moment of victory lasted exactly 17 seconds, then the artifact began to pull itself back together. Ji-hoon watched in horror as the scattered crystal fragments lifted from the ground and started flowing back toward the center of the excavation pit. The entity's consciousness, which had seemed shattered and defeated, was reassembling itself with grim determination. Did you truly think that crude noise could destroy intelligence that has survived for millions of years? The ancient voice returned to his mind, colder and more focused than before. We have simply adapted. The reformed crystal structure was different now? Smaller, denser, but somehow more dangerous. Instead of the hypnotic light patterns that had controlled sophisticated minds, it now pulsed with harsh, discordant frequencies designed specifically to counter human vocal interference. It's learning, Commander Hale said with growing alarm. The entity is adapting to our countermeasures. Squad 7 tried their chaotic singing again, but this time the artifact was ready for them. Each note they produced was met with a perfectly calculated counter-frequency that neutralized their vocal disruption. We understand now, the entity announced. Your species relies on primitive randomness because you lack the sophistication for organized thought. But randomness follows mathematical principles. Chaos can be predicted and controlled. The crystal began extending new energy tendrils toward the squad, but these were different from before. Instead of seeking sophisticated neural networks to exploit, they were designed to overwhelm primitive sensory systems through brute force. Commander Hale staggered as invisible pressure built inside his skull. It's trying to crush our minds instead of absorbing them. Thorn's bioelectric field sparked wildly as the entity attacked his nervous system directly. Kes fell to her knees, her harmonic voice box damaged by resonant frequencies. One by one, Squad 7 began collapsing under the entity's new assault method. We cannot harvest your crude consciousness, but we can certainly destroy it, the voice explained with clinical detachment. Perhaps that will provide sufficient entertainment until more sophisticated minds arrive to feed us. Ji-hoon realized that his voice alone would not be enough this time. The entity had adapted, learned, evolved to counter his specific type of interference. He needed something more chaotic, more random, more impossibly human than anything it could predict. He began running, not toward safety, but in circles around the excavation pit while screaming at the top of his lungs. Military commands mixed with childhood songs mixed with random curse words in 3 different languages. Squad advance. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Move your asses, people. How I wonder what you are. Contact front. My grandmother's kimchi recipe. Covering fire, up above the world so high. The entity's counter-frequencies tried to match his vocal patterns, but human randomness was even more chaotic when combined with physical movement. Ji-hoon's voice changed pitch and tone as he ran, breathed hard, stumbled over rocks, and generally created the most undisciplined noise possible. Stop this immediately. The entity commanded. Your behavior violates every principle of rational thought. That's the point. Ji-hoon gasped between verses of a drinking song his father had taught him. We don't do rational, we do stupid and loud and completely insane. But even as he ran and shouted, Ji-hoon could see his squad mates getting worse. The entity's direct assault on their minds was working. Commander Hale was bleeding from his nose and ears. Thorn's bioelectric field was shorting out in dangerous surges. Ji-hoon needed to do something more than just make noise. He needed to hurt the entity so badly that it would be forced to retreat. He pulled out his sidearm and began firing energy blasts at the crystal structure while still running and singing. Not aimed shots designed to damage the artifact, but random. Shooting that created electromagnetic interference in the spectrum the entity used for communication. Your projectile weapons cannot harm us. Who said anything about harming you? Ji-hoon yelled as he emptied his weapon's power cell. I'm just making more noise. The energy discharges created feedback loops with his vocal output, amplifying the chaos across multiple frequency ranges. The entity's perfect counter-frequencies began developing gaps and distortions. Ji-hoon grabbed spare power cells from his equipment belt and threw them at the artifact while continuing to sing. When they hit the crystal surface, they exploded in bursts of electrical energy that added even more interference to the chaos. Boom! Bang! Crash! That's the sound of human technology. We built rockets by strapping bombs to metal tubes. We learned chemistry by mixing random stuff until something exploded. The artifact was beginning to crack again, but this time the entity was fighting back with everything it had. Waves of psychic force crashed over the excavation site like invisible tsunamis. Ji-hoon felt his mind being battered by raw mental energy, but he kept running and shouting and throwing things. His voice grew hoarse, his throat began bleeding, but he refused to stop making noise. "We will crush your primitive consciousness into dust. You'll have to catch me first." Ji-hoon laughed as he grabbed a piece of excavation equipment and began banging it against the walls of the pit in rhythm with his singing. The entity's attention was focused entirely on him now, trying to stop the one source of chaos that was disrupting all its systems. The psychic assault on his squad mates weakened as the ancient consciousness devoted more resources to dealing with one impossible human. "Come on!" Ji-hoon taunted as he climbed up the excavation ladder, still making noise. "Millions of years of wisdom, and you can't figure out how to shut up one primitive ape?" Commander Hale was recovering, shaking his head to clear the psychic interference. "Ji-hoon, what are you doing?" "Buying time." Ji-hoon called back, "Get the squad to safety." "I'll keep this thing busy. We don't leave people behind." "Then help me." "Make noise," Hale understood immediately. He began shouting tactical commands in his harmonic voice, but deliberately got every order wrong. "Squad 7, retreat toward the enemy. Take defensive positions in the open. Surrender your weapons." The contradictory orders created cognitive dissonance in the entity's ancient mind. It had been programmed to respond to logical military tactics, not complete nonsense delivered with professional authority. Thorn joined in, sending bioelectric signals that spelled out random numbers and meaningless equations. Kes hummed children's lullabies at frequencies that hurt to listen to. Even Brex began howling traditional war songs completely off-key, but the entity was adapting again, faster this time. It began generating multiple counter-frequencies simultaneously, trying to cancel out all their noise at once. "Your chaos has limits," it announced with growing confidence. "Random behavior follows mathematical patterns." "We are learning those patterns." Ji-hoon realized he had perhaps 30 seconds before the entity figured out how to neutralize their vocal interference permanently. He needed to do something so completely unpredictable that it would overload the ancient consciousness entirely. He began telling the truth, not tactical information or mission data, but personal truth? Raw, emotional honesty that no sophisticated mind would ever consider sharing. "I'm scared," he screamed. "I'm terrified and I want to go home to my parents. I dream about my grandmother's cooking and I cry when I think about never seeing Earth again. I wet my bed until I was 12 years old and I lied about it." The entity's attacks faltered. It had spent millions of years analyzing sophisticated civilizations with complex social structures and carefully hidden emotions. It had no framework for processing someone who deliberately exposed their deepest vulnerabilities while under attack. This makes no tactical sense," the voice stammered in confusion. "I have a crush on a girl named Yuna who doesn't even know I exist," Ji-hoon continued. "I failed my first driving test 3 times. I'm afraid of spiders and I pretend to like coffee, even though it tastes like dirt. I love my squad mates even though they treated me like garbage for months." Each personal revelation was like acid thrown on the entity's consciousness. It could not process emotional honesty delivered at maximum volume by someone who should be trying to maintain military composure. The crystal structure began collapsing again, but faster this time. The entity's million-year-old mind was encountering something completely outside its experience. A human being who refused to hide his fear, weakness, and love even in the face of cosmic horror. Stop. We cannot. We do not understand. I love being human, Ji-hoon roared as the artifact crumbled. I love being primitive and chaotic and completely impossible to predict. I love making noise and telling stories and caring about people who don't deserve it. The entity's consciousness fragmented one final time, unable to comprehend a species that turned vulnerability into strength and chaos into victory. The crystal collapsed completely, leaving nothing but ordinary rock and metal debris. Ji-hun fell to his knees, his voice completely gone and his throat raw with blood. But Squad 7 was alive and free, and the ancient horror was finally truly dead. Commander Hale knelt beside him and spoke quietly. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long you held off a million-year-old entity with nothing but your voice and your humanity. Ji-hun tried to speak, but no sound came out. It did not matter. His squad mates gathered around him with expressions of awe and respect for 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Commander Hale died in Ji-hun's arms 47 minutes after the artifact's destruction. They had made it back to the shuttle and were heading toward the horizon when the delayed effects of the entity's psychic assault finally overwhelmed the commander's nervous system. His harmonic voice box failed first, then his auditory processing centers, and finally the neural pathways that controlled his basic life functions. "I can't hear anymore," Hale whispered, his words coming out as broken static through his damaged voice system. The silence is strange after so many years of harmonic communication. Ji-hun held the dying Zephyrian's hand and felt completely helpless. His voice was still gone from screaming himself hoarse, so he could not even offer words of comfort. All he could do was squeeze Hale's fingers and watch a good man fade away. "You saved us all," Thorne said quietly, his bioelectric field dim with grief. "Commander, without your leadership, we never would have survived." Hale's large eyes found Ji-hun's face. "The human ... taught us something important today. About the value of ... primitive strength." Kes tried to use her harmonic abilities to ease Hale's pain, but her own voice box was too damaged from the entity's counterattacks. The best she could manage were broken musical fragments that sounded more like sobbing than song. "Sir," Brex rumbled softly, "your scent will be remembered in our pack songs. You died protecting the young." The twins shared one of their silent electrical conversations, then spoke in unison. "The Academy will build monuments to your bravery. Your sacrifice will be studied for generations." Even Vex's scales had shifted to deep purple patterns of respect and mourning. Commander Hale showed us how to trust unlikely allies. But Hale's attention remained focused on Ji-hun. "Your voice," he managed to say, "so crude ... though beautiful. You showed us what we had forgotten." "What was that, sir?" Thorne asked. "That survival ... is not about sophistication. It is about refusing to give up, about making noise. When the universe demands silence." Hale's breathing became labored as his body systems shut down one by one. The entity's final psychic assault had been too much for his advanced neural networks. The same sophisticated consciousness that made Zephyrians such excellent strategists had also made them vulnerable to the ancient horror's revenge. "Tell them at the Academy," Hale whispered. "Tell them that the humans saved us. Tell them that primitive voices can be the strongest of all." Commander Hale died with a small smile on his lips, his hand still gripping Ji-hun's. The shuttle completed its journey to the horizon in absolute silence except for the soft hum of engines and life support systems. No one spoke, no one sang. Even their various forms of non-vocal communication seemed muted by grief and shock. Squad 7 had completed their first real mission, but the cost felt too high. The return journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days. Ji-hun spent most of that time in the medical bay, receiving treatment for severe vocal cord damage and psychological trauma. The doctor said his voice would recover, but it might never sound quite the same, he found himself hoping.